Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Effective Resume Thursdays. We're very glad you're with us. It's Thursday, May 13th, 2021. Please note this event is currently being recorded and is currently live on Facebook. The recording will be on the Career DFW Facebook page and the Career USA YouTube channel for others to view in the future. By participating in this event, and if you post a comment in the chat box or have your microphone or camera on, you give consent for your comments, name, and picture to appear. For those people on Zoom, as soon as you come up, if you think about a question, please just open the chat box and put them in the chat box. And for those people watching on Facebook, please just enter your questions into the comment field. And as soon as our speaker takes a break and asks for questions, we'll be sure to get those questions asked to our speaker. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jeff Morris. Back in 2008, I started a website called careerdfw.org to help those in the Dallas-Fort Worth area in their job search by trying to put everything they need to know in one place. In 2012, I started a second website called careerusa.org to help people outside the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I have written a book called What I've Learned About Your Job Search That You May Not Know. It is available on Amazon. I facilitate and lead the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group. The group's been doing that since 2007. The group's been around since the late 1990s. I took it over in 2007, and I'll tell you about our upcoming programming tomorrow at the end of this session. And since 2017, I've been a member of the practice interview team. So if you have interviewing, if you like to practice your interviewing, reach out to me and I'll get you some information so we can get you signed up for a practice interview. At the end of this session, we're going to pick two winners, two people who can sign up for jobscan.co. Jobscan.co and it is .co, not .com. JobScan is a way that you can load a job description and load your resume, and then you see how good the match is, and it'll tell you what the percentage of match is. So that way you can make sure you've got the proper keywords and other information, and it'll give you suggestions on things you may want to change for a better match. So we'll do that at the very end of this session. So please hang with us to the end. Well, our speaker today is Tony Beshara. Tony is the owner and president of Babbage and Associates. And today he's going to talk about the top 10 big mistakes of resume writing. So Tony, thank you for being with us. And I'll let you tell people a little bit more about yourself.
All right, Jeff, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I've been in the placement and recruitment business since 1973. I've personally placed more than 11,000 people in that period of time. I wrote the expansion of the program you're going to hear today is the Job Search Solution. It's a 60-hour online program that tells you everything you ever wanted to know and then some about a job.
Tony, we need to get you to share your screen.
Oh, yeah. How
Details.
do I do that? Oh boy. 1 second here. Okay. Does that work?
We see, now go ahead and click on from beginning. We'll be good to go.
Is that it?
Good to go. There we go.
All right. Okay. I'm the president of Babbage and Associates. We have been managing the placement and recruitment process since 1952. The first big mistake that people make regarding a resume is that they grossly overestimate the value of a resume. They think that a resume is going to get them a job. At best, it's going to get you an interview. You're going to have to get the job. But there's a tendency to think that all I got to do is hit that send button and everything's going to work out all right, that I'm going to get a job. So they spend hours and hours and hours. I've even known people to spend a week writing their resume when at best 2 hours. The rest of the time you ought to be distributing that resume and picking up the phone and calling people to get an interview, because that's how you're going to get hired. Now you got to have a resume, although I've placed people with just their LinkedIn profile where they didn't have to come up with a resume, but the organization that I was referring them to knew exactly what they were getting and what they were trying to find. I don't recommend trying to tell people, oh, just go to my LinkedIn profile. Most everybody else is producing a resume, so then you should produce it yourself. But don't overestimate the value of it. It's not going to get you a job. Okay. The average resume gets read in 10 seconds, which means that it doesn't really get read at all. This is probably one of the biggest mistakes that people make, and probably the most important thing that people need to realize. Your resume gets scanned, it does not get read. When people look at your resume, they want to look at, who do you work for? Do I know what that company does? What did you do there? Do I understand what you did there? And how well did you do it? And if they can scan that within 10 or 15 seconds at most, they may very well have you in for an interview. I got a resume yesterday, 3 pages long. Nobody's ever going to read that. You got to realize that your resume is in a stack or online with about 150 others. And if I can't get what I need from that resume within 10 or 15 seconds, I'm deleting it and I'm moving on to the next one. So keep in mind, your resume gets scanned, it doesn't get read. If the first page, like this resume I got yesterday, if your first page is full of objective and full of summary, it's probably not going to get read at all.
Tony, we've got an error message popping up. It says, please move this window away from the shared application.
How do you do that?
Well, I don't know. I don't know what all you were saying. So I don't know if there's something else.
I'm seeing that. Shoot. I'm seeing that.
Something else on that screen. I don't know if you've got something behind this slideshow. I don't really know.
Okay, let me see what I can do. I don't want to stop share, do I? I'm really sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. Well, here, I tell you what, I'm going to stop your sharing and let's see if let you share again and see if it pops up a second time.
Okay. Screen share again?
Yes, go ahead. Let's try again.
Okay.
It's probably some other program that you have open running in the background.
Ugh. Let me see if I can move this and get rid of it. No, okay.
Yeah, so like
All right,
Michael's comments here, the joy of technology.
I'm gonna try this share.
Okay.
And then I'll go back. Okay.
Just yep, there you go.
Okay, I think we were close to this. All right, so your resume gets read and gets scanned in 10 seconds. And don't forget that. So have somebody look at your resume that doesn't know you. Can they understand exactly what you did, who you did, and how you did it for somebody in 10 or 15 seconds? You got something that might be of value. People underestimate the number of resumes interviewing or hiring authorities receive. 60% of the time that your resume is going to be evaluated, it's going to be evaluated by somebody who really doesn't know that much about the job. It's somebody in HR. It's somebody that might be the administrative person that works for the hiring authority. We had a fellow one time, a controller of a company that needed to hire an accountant. And when his daughter was home from college for Christmas break, he had her going over resumes and choosing which resumes ought to be done, ought to be looked at, and ought to be reviewed. You have no idea the number of resumes they're getting. They're getting hordes of them, and you don't have any idea who's reviewing them. Like I mentioned, they overestimate the qualifications of the people that screen and pass their resume along. What employers will say is they'll say, somebody take a look at these resumes and here are some of the keywords you need to look for. If those keywords show up on that resume, or they give them some idea of what shows up on a resume, then you ought to consider it. If they've had more than 3 jobs in 3 years, don't consider it. Doesn't matter what the jobs are or how qualified they might be. They throw out stuff to people that don't really know what they're looking at. Your hope is that an actual hiring authority, that is a hiring authority, somebody with pain that needs to hire somebody, is the person that is looking at your resume. But don't count on that, because it's not, it may very well not be. And like I said, 60% of the time, it's not the person that's doing the interviewing that's looking at your resume. Here you think they are. You think that if you're an accountant, you think the controller's looking at it. They're not. Somebody else is. People write the wrong content in their resume. This is one of the biggest mistakes. They write all kinds of stuff. I got one the other day that said, literally, I was born in blah, blah, blah. And he's telling me where he was born and how he grew up and how hard it was on the farm that he grew up on. I don't care about that stuff. I may care about that stuff somewhere down the line, but the content, it isn't going to get read. It's like cover letters. I don't even recommend them. These long things of why you should hire me. People are going to interpret that from your resume. So they write all this stuff on the resume. Great verbal and written communication skills. Junk. Nobody cares about that. What they care about is, what did you do and how well did you do it? My recommendation is you've got to have as much stories sell and numbers tell. Now, you can't very well tell stories in a resume, but you can certainly put numbers. Anything that you can quantify what you've done in your job. The more of that you do, I recommend bolding numbers. The more numbers you have on a resume, the more that tells people this is somebody I ought to really talk to. But they write stuff on their resume as though it was getting read, or it was getting read 2 or 3 times instead of it being scanned. So they write stuff on there that's great if you want to read it, but not good if you want to get it scanned, or if it's going to be scanned. Resume formats are awfully distracting. I get these stuff all the time. They've got columns on them, and they've got charts, and they've got quotes, and they've got boxes, and they're colored on one side, and they've got, I got one the other day with the name of the candidate was down the left-hand side of the page in script. And it was, you had to turn it to the side to read the name of the candidate. They got their, I got one the other day that didn't even have a phone number on it. Now, come on. What do you mean? A resume with no phone number, no email address? How am I going to get a hold of this person? You know, sometimes people put the phone numbers down at the bottom of the page. No. You put it up at the top, your name, how they can get a hold of you, your email address, your phone number, in plain old black and white script with reasonably sized formats so that people can read it. They don't have to squint to read it. I had one not too long ago where the guy tried to put his whole life on one page, and the script was so small it was really hard to read. Keep it simple, and don't let the format be distracting. Don't put flowers, pictures of your kids. Don't make it pink and green and yellow and blue and, you know, and all of this fancy stuff. Black and white, because It's going to be looked at on a screen. When people look at things on a screen, they don't read them the same way that they do when they read something that's in their hand. Psychologists tell us that whatever's on a screen, people look at the very middle of the screen first. They then move to the left and go up to the top. I don't know why, but that's what they do. So the most important aspect of your resume should be right smack dab in the middle of that first page. And I recommend that you put right smack dab in the middle of that first page, a description of where you're working, what you're presently doing, and what your accomplishments were. But if a resume format is distracting, it's too easy to just press the delete button and move on to the next one. Cover letters, some people really like them. I did a survey when I wrote a book on resumes. This was about 10 years ago. And we did a survey of 1,400 employers. And the survey came back with the fact that cover letters only get read if the people like the resume they see. So they'll read a cover letter after they read a resume. Now, what I might recommend is as you're sending most resumes via email. In the email, I would put 2 or 3 bullet points as to why you should consider me as a candidate. Here's my resume. Here's why I make you a good employee. 3 or 4 bullet points. Don't make it any longer than that. It doesn't get read. It takes too long to go through a whole bunch of them. So I dispense with a cover letter, but I would communicate through 3 or 4 bullet points. Here's why I'd make a good employee. Cover letters are grossly overrated, just like resumes are. They don't get read unless somebody's really interested in interviewing you. And if they're interested in interviewing you, you probably don't need the darn thing. Oh boy, at least once a week. Now, I interview 2 to 3 candidates a day. I place somewhere between 8 and 10 people a month. The average recruiter in the country places 1.5 people a month. So it's not that I'm so good. I'm just running really, really fast. Okay. But at least twice a week, and this drives me crazy, at least twice a week, I get a resume that doesn't agree with the LinkedIn profile of the candidate I'm representing. Now, I take my time. Doesn't make me mad. I take my time and I look at a resume I might want to work with, and I go to the LinkedIn profile to see if it matches. At least twice a week, I get one that doesn't match. Once in a while, I get in a big hurry and I think, oh, this candidate's so good. Or I've had the candidate in, which I try to do 95% of the time. I interview my candidates face to face. And I just assume they're smart enough to have their LinkedIn profile. And the employer calls me and says, I got this resume and it looks really good. But when you looked at a LinkedIn profile, it doesn't agree with the resume. I can't even imagine anybody would not do that. But so, yeah, it's a big mistake. And I know most of the people out there are going to sit there and say, that's crazy. I would say that's crazy, but I guarantee you, you got to make sure that your resume matches your LinkedIn profile. And even to get more granular than that, make sure the dates are the same. Because there's nothing more frustrating. I'm good, but I can't overcome that. When an employer says, Tony, I looked at the resume and the LinkedIn profile, the dates are all screwed up. What am I supposed to say? Well, I'm dealing with such a smart candidate that he kind of outsmarted himself a little bit. I mean, come on. Ugh. Yeah. This used to be a bigger problem than it is now, but it's one size fits all. people send the same resume to everybody. Well, if you're a vice president of sales, but you're applying for a sales job, don't put vice president of sales on your resume. Everybody wants to think that their resume has to be all galactic. They got to be all world. Depends on the job you're applying for. Gear and rewrite the resume towards the job you're applying for. Titles drive me crazy. There are some, I interviewed a guy yesterday. Everybody in his company is a vice president. What he is, he's a sales guy. Okay, so change that to sales. Don't put VP on there. He said, well, that's my title. I said, I don't care if it's your title. Some of the people that we may refer this resume to are going to be looking for a salesperson. And if they look at your resume and they see vice president, they think, I'm not hiring a vice president, and they throw it away. So if you have to change your title to fit the job that you're applying for. Now, okay, if you're a VP of sales, don't change your title to controller. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is don't make one resume fit everything and think, well, they'll read it and they'll catch on. Go in and change it. Most job opportunities are posted so you can get an idea of what they're looking for when they go to interview somebody and what they're looking for. So rewrite the resume, customize it to the job so that you have a better chance of getting the interview, because what you're trying to sell is the interview. Mistakes of length. Anything beyond 2 pages at most is probably a mistake. I don't like objectives and summaries. Nobody cares about your objective. They care about their objective. The problem I have with summaries is that I got one yesterday. It lists all of the summaries of the accomplishments of the person, but it doesn't associate those accomplishments with the particular job. So certainly you want to put accomplishments on there, but you want to associate those with the particular job. I got a resume a few years ago where the guy put on in his summary that he was the #1 salesperson in the country for his company. It was 10 years ago, but he had this in his summary. That doesn't mean anything to anybody. And when they look at the resume, they think, oh, he was the #1 sales guy in the country, but then they find out it was 10 years ago. So associate those summaries with the particular jobs that you've had. Dates. Dates are sometimes people need to cover up the number of jobs that they've had by putting years instead of months and years. Interestingly enough, you can probably get away with that. But you could put down a 2-year period of time and really only be at a company or have the job for 1 year. I understand that, but the dates need to be reasonable, and the better off, you're better off to put the month and the date. And if you've lost the most recent job and you've been gone for more than, I tell candidates, 90 days, you need to put the day it ended. I had a candidate one time that got a job, and after he had gotten the job, they were updating his information, and he went in and explained to them that his resume said that he worked at the company to present, but he'd really been gone from the company for almost a year. And they just looked at him, and then he told them, and this was not true. He said, well, my recruiter told me to do that. I was very uncomfortable. The company was mad at me. I didn't tell him to do that. I asked him if the dates were correct. Now, I can live with a little bit of wiggle room there if you've been gone from the job for less than 90 days, but if you've been gone from the job for more than 90 days, you better put it down, because what companies are doing these days is after you get hired, they're going back and they're checking how long you were at the last company. And if they find out that you, in essence, they will interpret it as lied on your resume, that very easy. In fact, what they did with this particular guy, this was a few years ago, they canned him on the spot because they figured that he had lied to them. And where he really embellished, but he embellished way a lot more than just he should have. But so watch out for dates. I mentioned earlier titles. Change your title. If it's one of those confusing titles that nobody really understands, change it to a traditional title. A client services manager can mean a lot of different things to people. A vice president of sales can mean a lot of different things to people. Make sure that you, even if you have to change it, use a common title that everybody understands. Other basics, like I mentioned before, keep it simple as best you can, right to the point, and make sure what you're communicating is specific to as much of the job as you possibly can get. Oh yeah, the wrong resume strategy. What I mean by this is thinking that all I got to do is just send this resume off. I recommend, if you're going to send a resume, call the person you're going to send it to first. And then call them and ask them if they received it, even if you have to leave a voicemail. Sending a resume, emailing it, blasting a resume out over the internet, you know, they're getting 150 of these. Yours is just one of them. Try to focus on a focused strategy of a resume. A call first, sending the resume to the right person. If you're an accountant and you think a controller might be looking for an accountant, send the resume to the controller. Sending a resume to HR, HR are wonderful people, but they're overburdened and they're getting millions of them. I mean, thousands of them. You want to try to take a strategy of getting that resume in front of the right person. If you know somebody in the company, try to get your resume to that person in the company and ask that person to deliver it to the right person for you. And so try to take, I mentioned this in the job search solution, there are a number of different strategies you can take with a resume. Hitting the send button to just a posting on the internet is not the best strategy. Now, it may wind up being that that's the only strategy you've got, and if that's what you have to live with, okay, I get it. But adopting the resume of adopting the strategy of I just send this thing out and then spray and pray, it's not the right strategy. And then for the complete elaborate explanation of this, you can go to the jobsearchsolution.com. All right, what questions might people have?
Tony, you mentioned the word, and I haven't heard anybody say this in many, many workshops, the word pain. And I guess when, talk a little bit more about that, because I think people need to realize that, what you mean by that. And I think it would be
we have a saying over here, find the person with pain. Try to find a hiring authority that needs to hire somebody, the one with the pain. And the closer you are to the one with the pain, the better off you are. So if you're dealing directly with a hiring authority, look, well, I'll ask this. Who knows how many people there are in the average company in the United States? Anybody want to guess? What is the average number of people in a company in the United States?
Somebody put down 15. 600, 500,
16. 16 people. That's the average size. And you know what's so funny about that? When I got in this business in 1973, the average company in the United States employed 16 people. It's still the same. So there are lots of people that you can contact that have pain. Owners, the managers. We have a tendency to think that the world is run by great big companies. It's not. So what your goal is to find somebody that has the pain of needing to hire somebody. The closer you are to that pain, or the person that's got that pain, the better off you are. We work with companies all the time. They're just as frustrated with their HR department as we are, because we have a hard time getting around them and getting through them. They have a hard time getting candidates. In fact, I talked to a guy just about an hour ago where he said, Tony, I've been looking for 3 weeks. You've sent me 9 resumes. My HR department has been working on it for 2 months, and they've sent me 1, and I can't even find the person. So he was relying on us. So, and it's not that they aren't good people. They're wonderful people. They're just overburdened. They may not know what they're looking for in a particular department. They may have so many job openings that they're having to deal with, and they just don't have the pain. The person that needs to hire somebody, because if they don't get somebody hired, they end up having to do the work. That's the person with pain.
All right, we will ask, are you recommending that we find contacts in LinkedIn and contact them directly, or is it better to apply, online?
Both. But you're going to have a better opportunity trying to contact the person directly. Now, sometimes people respond to LinkedIn messages, sometimes they don't. It depends again on their pain, but I do both.
Okay. I mean, we talked about in the yesterday in the informational interviewing, or the interviewing session we had yesterday, that when you apply online, you have a 2% chance of somebody, HR or somebody, reaching out to you. But if you can get a resume into somebody and talk to somebody or get your resume hand delivered, whatever, it could go up to almost 40%. So
yeah, I did a study about 5 years ago. The odds of you getting a job by sending a resume to an online posting are 1 out of 389. So now if you fit the thing perfectly and all of that, but you got to try to find somebody that or somebody that knows somebody, or somehow get it in front of the person that has the opening.
right. Let's see here. David says, best way to show upward mobility in a role when the job title stays consistent.
I'm sorry, run that by me again.
So the job title, so you're in a job for 7 years, the job title really never changes, but you start getting more and more responsibilities because maybe you start to manage a few more people, you get bigger projects. What's the best way to show that?
You can show that by having the dates under that job. For instance, say you were at the same place for 10 years, but every 2 years you got a promotion, then I would put down the first 2 years, the second 2 years, the third 2 years. I would bold those dates and then talk about how you got increased responsibility. So it's like, it would be the same if you got promoted 2 or 3 times in the same company. You would write down the different dates that you got promoted, and you would describe the job.
Okay.
And I would bold those dates, and so that, and then make it clear that you were promoted or the responsibilities were increased or that kind of thing.
Okay. Jennifer asked, is it a good idea to connect with somebody who's going to interview you, like the hiring manager or the VP of finance? I guess when you talk to connect with somebody, you're talking about, is it a good idea to connect with somebody on LinkedIn before the interview? Or should
Yeah,
you wait
Yeah,
until
I
after?
try to connect with them before the interview, after the interview, as much as I possibly could.
okay. Thank
See,
you.
the biggest reasons that people don't want to do that is that they're afraid they're going to be rejected. Man, if you're going to get rejected, reject me now. I mean, no, no is the second best answer I can get.
Okay.
Okay. The best answer I can get is yes. The second best answer I can get is no. Because if I'm going to get no, give it to me now. Don't give it to me 2 weeks from now. Give it to me now. And so, okay, so you say, well, I might irritate somebody. Okay, fine. If somebody's irritated by that, give me a break. Uh, Maybe you caught them on a bad minute or a bad time or that kind of thing. I spend a lot of time cold calling because that's the nature of my business. And I'll get a hold of somebody and say, "Oh, you got to go. I may have an opening, but you got to go through HR." What that tells me is he doesn't have all that much pain. He or she doesn't have all that much pain. They really don't need anybody all that badly. If they're waiting for that, if they really need somebody, they're going to talk to me, especially if I've got somebody that might be of real value to them.
And I think it's real important also to make sure when you send that LinkedIn request, be sure to put something, be sure to write a message with it. Looking forward to talking
Yes.
with you this Friday. I've applied for this position, and maybe one or two bullet points just to, get them to look at your profile, so that they'll see what's
Exactly.
out there.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
very good. Look, you're trying to get interviews in any way, shape, or form you can.
Right. All right. See, D asked, any thoughts on how to write up the last position when it was a caregiver? You were a caregiver for a family member.
I'd say just that. 2019 to present, caregiver of ailing family member. People have a lot of empathy for that. They just do. And there's nothing wrong with that. You just write that up and put it on there. And, if this sounds a little cold, but if somebody's so heartless to not consider that as being something that's necessary to do in your life, then you don't want to work for them anyhow.
Right. Would you add a couple bullet points underneath it, like responsible for doctor's visit, responsible for scheduling appointments, or would you
Yeah,
just,
they're gonna assume that, you know, and they may very well even ask you about it when you get into the interview. They may very well do that, but just caregiver for ailing parent. Now, the thing you might want to do is be sure that you have, be sure that you, if there's an ending date to it, or somehow it was resolved, um, uh, took care of an ailing parent who is since deceased. The concern that an employer might have is if the need for that is ongoing, that it's going to detract from your ability to do the job and your ability to get the work done. So you need to be a little careful of that. I have candidates sometimes that say, I had one yet the other day where he said, I took the last year and a half off to um, help my aging dad because he has Alzheimer's. And I said, well, has that been resolved? He said, yes, we have him in a nursing home. So he needed to put that on his resume because the concern is if you're going to have this ongoing, if every day you have to leave at 3 o'clock to get somebody to the doctor, you're not going to be able to do your job very well. So be sure you communicate that it's been resolved.
okay. Those are the questions that have popped up so far. If anybody else has a question, you're welcome to unmute your mic. Michael, you have a question?
Yeah, so you're giving away the thing for job scan at the end of the thing. So I've used job scan a couple times to match up the resume and the job description. And it always wants you to hit that 80%. So you're trying. How, of a stickler are you to that? Because, I've done it and I've got it up to 50%, but sometimes you can't get all the things that it calls out in there, or it says employees but you have employee, but if you were to change it to employees, it wouldn't sound right. So thoughts on that?
Jeff, you're going to have to address that. I don't know very much about JobScan. I don't run into it very much, so I can't speak to it at all.
I think with JobScan, and the key to JobScan is it's a tool. It will help get you hopefully a little bit better. It may see some things that you don't see, but you know, if you copy in the whole job description, and in the job description it talks about health insurance and 401k, you're not going to have those things in your resume. So how can you ever match those? So you've got to make it make sense for you. Use it as a tool. You're never going to hit 100%. I don't know what the magic percent would be, but I would just be using it to go, oh yeah, I have the title of this job is not, it's off by a word, or they were looking for an extra word. Let me add that because that would make sense. And I'm happy with that. You know, I mean, you can only do what makes what you feel safe about. So hopefully this is just like showing this to somebody else and go, hey, what do you see in my resume? Do you think it matches the job description? And go, oh, you didn't talk about this. And, you know, JobScan will point that out. So forget about the numbers, look at what it's talking about and go, oh yeah, that's a good idea. Or no, that doesn't make sense the way it's worded. I think that's fine.
You know, one thing you have to remember, and this is a psychological challenge for most people. And I was mentioning this on my radio program the other day, that there's a difference between being able to do a job and being able to get a job. 60% of the candidates I work with could probably do 60% of the jobs that I've got. But they're not going to get the chance because an employer he's running a risk in hiring somebody. So he or she is going to want to try to minimize their risk. So they're going to try to find some kind of experience that, in their opinion, fits best or makes better sense for them to hire, because they are in a fishbowl. If they hire somebody that doesn't make it, then somebody's going to say to them, well, why didn't you look at couldn't you tell if they didn't have the right kind of experience? Well, they don't want to make a mistake. The mantra of most hiring authorities is, I don't want to make a mistake. 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 You're sitting there thinking, hiring me ain't no mistake. You can't make a mistake hiring me. Well, you see it that way, but the hiring authority doesn't. And the biggest fear that he's got, or he or she's got, is that they make a mistake. Keep in mind that when you're an engineer and you mess up a drawing, you just go back to the computer and fix the drawing. If you're an accountant and you mess up the accounting, they have erasers on pencils, that's what they used to say, but you can go back in the computer and you can change it. And maybe nobody will know it, right? But man, when you make a bad hire, it's so hard to get rid of people these days, when you go to everybody in the company knows it. Okay. And if you hired a doofus, they think you're a doofus. And so it runs it through the head of every hiring authority. I don't want to make a mistake. So you might be the most qualified candidate in the whole world, but if you can't prove it for one reason or another, you don't get hired. And that's what you have to remember. When you're sending that resume, they are looking for particular specifics that prove that you could do the job better than the other people they could hire, so that if you wind up not working out, they can always say, well, he or she had experience. I had a guy one time, I had a candidate who had a heart attack and died on the 89th day of his employment. And the employer called me and he was mad. He was mad at me. He thought I should have known the guy had a heart condition. Well, I know he was just blowing off, and he didn't know who else to call, right? And so he gets a hold of me. But you got to remember that that's the way people are looking at your resume, your interview, and everything else. They're afraid of making a mistake, and they are looking for just as many reasons not to hire you as they are looking for reasons to hire you. And you've got to remember that when you're trying to get in front of them.
So I got a question. I just posted in the chat box for everybody on Zoom a sample cover letter, a sample resume that talks about some of the things that Tony's talked about today, and also a sample bio. Do you ever, what do you think about the one-page bio?
I don't think they get read because when a person looking at resumes, whether it's the hiring authority or not, is conditioned to see name of company, date of company, accomplishments of what I did, and they're looking at 10 of those, and then they get this thing that has a bio. There's a tendency to think this person's covering this up, covering something up. The second problem is that it isn't, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong, it's just the way it is. They're conditioned to looking at resumes the way they are. They're not going to read a bio. If you scan a bio, you don't get much out of it. Okay. If you scan a resume, you're going to get more out of it. But keep in mind, your resume is getting scanned. It's not getting read. I guess if you know somebody, if you know people are going to read it, I guess it's okay. But when I get them, I get 35 or, I get as many as 100 resumes a day. And so if I got one that's just a bio, I probably don't pay much attention to it.
Okay, so it doesn't, for you, it doesn't help at all. Okay.
No.
It's just good to know from a recruiter standpoint. I like a one-page bio if you're going to have an information interview with somebody. You're just trying to reach out, finding out about the company.
Yeah.
It doesn't scream, help me, I'm looking for a job. It just says, I'd like some information and advice. And
Okay. Yeah. And I won't deny that. I'm just giving, from my narrow point of view of looking at resumes all day, that's the way I see
right.
it.
Resumes catch your attention much faster than a bio.
Well, and I'm used to reading them,
right. Right.
and so, I'm looking for company. Do I know what they do? What did the person do there and how well did they do it?
Okay. So in 1 minute, tell us what would be your top couple tips that you'd want people to know.
Okay. Top tip, remember that your resume gets scanned, not read, and that you're going to have to produce and deliver a lot of them because the numbers and ratios of getting an interview to a resume is a lot greater than you think. You have to get a lot more of them out there. It's a job in itself. So just make sure you got a good one and you try to get it in front of as many of the right people as you possibly can.
Well, Tony, thank you very much. Great information. Here's Tony's LinkedIn profile, what it looks like. If you want to reach out to Tony, please, send him a message, tell him you saw him here on Effective Resume Thursdays. Whenever you do send a message, just a little LinkedIn tip. Where you see that blue message button, when you see a blue button, that means you can connect, you can send a personal note. When you see a white message button or a white connect button, that means that you can't send one. So you always want to send a personal note. So, find somebody's profile, be sure to have that blue button to send that personal note. All right, Career FW Career USA, we're putting on training 5 days a week. Grab a lunch and learn with us every day. Tomorrow, let's see here. Tomorrow morning at the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group, we have another recruiter, Rick Martinez, who owns R2 Technologies, is going to be talking with us about why your next job should be a contract role. So if you'd like to join us tomorrow, hear Rick's take on that, please join us tomorrow morning at 9:30. The Women of Wisdom is not meeting this week because they only meet on the 1st and 3rd Fridays of the month. They'll be back again next Friday. This coming Monday, remote networking. Our speaker is Stephanie Michelle. She wrote a book called The Confident Introvert. So it's sort of an interesting title. So she'll be talking and sharing some tips about remote networking this Monday at networking. We talk about networking every Monday. This Tuesday on LinkedIn Tuesdays, Terry Sullivan will be with us. He's going to talk about how to create a LinkedIn brand that tells your key contacts who you are, what you do, and how you can help. Please note that this event next Tuesday will not be recorded. Terry does not allow his items to be left up on YouTube or Facebook. So we will be on Facebook, but we'll be deleting it right after the event's over. So if you want to watch it, you have to watch it live. And next Wednesday, if you're interviewing Wednesdays, we'll be on session number 3. We're going to talk for an hour and 15 minutes, all about star stories. You know, why they're so effective, why you need to talk about them. You need to have them on your resumes. You need to have them. You need to have discussion points, and you need to be able to talk about it in an interview. So star stories will be our topic for next Wednesday. This session has been recorded. It will be on the Career DFW Facebook page and the Career USA YouTube channel for you to go back and view as often or as much as you'd like. Please follow us on Facebook. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We really would appreciate it. On the YouTube channel, it looks something like this. This is the Career USA YouTube channel. Click on playlist where you see the green arrow, and then don't click on the video underneath. I wish I could do away with those and just have where you see that red arrow that says view full playlist, because when you click there, up will come a list of all the different dates and the titles that we talked about, and you'll be able to see this presentation. It'll be up. It'll be a couple hours before YouTube will upload this for you to go back and watch it again. If you're not receiving emails about our workshops, you're welcome to join the Career USA mailing list. Just send an email to Career USA, the +, subscribe @groups.io, and I'll put that email address up at the very end of this presentation. All right, it's time to give away win 1 month of unlimited use of jobscan.co. We'll take the 2 closest winners. Please put a number between 1 and 100. We'll take the 2 closest numbers without going over. So we're playing the Price is Right rules. So please put your numbers in there. Well, we got a nice range of numbers here. I don't think nobody's hit the number yet. Nobody's exactly hit the number, but that's okay. Just got to be close. All right, so here we go. Our winning number, and that's it. No more entries. Our winning number is 64. So let me go back and see who we have. Anybody? Well, I think 56 from Michael. Ooh, what's the next closest one? Ooh, I got 239s, it looks like. Oh, on Facebook, Daniel picked 50. So we're going to pick 50 and 56. So Michael and Daniel, please, I need to have your email address. So if you will, in the chat box or in the comment field, please put your email address and I will copy those over. And this will be for the month of June. So around June 1st, June 2nd, you'll get an email on how to use it, and you'll be able to use it for the entire month of June. All right. So just please remember, Career DFW, we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Tony's a volunteer. I'm a volunteer. We don't get paid to do, well, Tony gets paid from his business, but he doesn't get paid to present to you and try to help you land your next grad opportunity. We're here to just trying to help you, to try to teach you and hopefully make your job search go quicker. Career DFW, we survive on donations. Please consider when you get your next opportunity to make a donation so we can continue to do what we do. The donations go to pay for Zoom, it pays for the web names, the web hosting, and anything that I can't get donated to get things done. So we really would appreciate a donation, but wait until you get your next job. Thank you for joining us today. Tony, once again, thank you very, very much.
Thank you all very much. I really appreciate, Jeff. We all appreciate what you do.
Well, thank you very much. This is our 270th show we've put on since COVID started. So we're very glad to be here, and we'll be here 5 days a week. So have a great afternoon, everybody. Hopefully we'll see you tomorrow morning or one day next week.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you very, very much. Let me stop the recording here.